Welcome to the Empower Podcast, the show where we discuss big ideas with leaders and change makers as we work to create a Mississippi where everyone can rise. This is Grant Callen. Thank you for joining us. You know, Mississippi is a Republican-controlled state, so we inevitably talk with a lot of Republicans on this podcast. But some of our most interesting and, frankly, most popular conversations happen when I bring on a Democratic lawmaker and we talk honestly about our areas of agreement and disagreement. Today's guest is someone I've been hoping to have on for quite a while, someone I respect and count among my closest friends in the Mississippi legislature. I hope that doesn't hurt your reelection chances by saying that out loud. State Representative Otis Anthony represents his hometown of Indianola in the Mississippi House of Representatives, a role he has held since 2018. He's a pastor, he's a businessman, he's the owner of a financial planning firm there in Sunflower County. He earned degrees from Tougaloo College and Agape Bible College. He's married to his wife, Portia, and they have 2 children. Otis, welcome to the Empower Podcast.
Grant, thank you for having me. It's always good to sit down with you. I think Mississippi needs more of this, that we can sit down and even if we disagree on policy and perspectives, we can always talk about things that we do agree on. And so thank you so much for having me here.
It's an honor to have you.
Yeah.
I suspect we will find more agreement than disagreement, but we'll see.
I believe that.
We'll talk about both.
I believe that.
How's your family doing?
Family's doing great. This is the end of the year for my daughter, who's still in college there, but she is taking some summer courses, so looking forward to that. And my son is doing well. You know, he finished in May of last year.
Great.
And so he's working now, doing policy work, and we're trying to get him in law school. So that has been a challenge in itself, but everybody's doing good. Wife, of course, is doing fine, and still have this long to-do list that I have to work on.
I understand, especially now that you're back home, not in session.
That's exactly right.
Well, I want to talk about a lot and maybe even talk about redistricting, but I think perhaps we should warm up to that.
Okay.
Let's start with some of your personal story. So what do people need to know about Otis Anthony?
Well, Grant, you shared some of that in the beginning of the introduction, but public service has always been to, I guess, the heart of who I am. Being a pastor helps in this role. I know some people have, said that politics and the pulpit should not, match. But there is I consider this a ministry. We started out in public service. My father was on the city council there in Indianola, and he wanted my sister and I to be involved. And so we could not just complain about a situation. We could not just, have disagreements on issues and policies. We had to actually get involved with it. And so this was one way we were able to get involved. We started out volunteering with a local Chamber of Commerce and any kind of festival we had there when B.B. King came to town, any community service that we could give. We started out like that, and then ultimately we took the seat that he had held some years later, and it's been on the way up ever since. So.
What was the Delta like? I'm thinking in your town, Indianola, hometown of B.B. King, when you were growing up, and how has the Delta changed?
Yeah, that's a great question. We were, and we still are, Indianola has always been kind of the hub of Sunflower County. We had a typical southern rural city where most people knew everyone. They knew your parents, they knew your grandparents, and we took care of each other. We had thriving industry then with some of the manufacturing plants there. It used to be Lewis Grocery, Martin Tool and Die. Small businesses were thriving. And so it was the perfect upbringing for me to be born and raised in the Delta in Sunflower County. And I think it prepared me and many of my high school and elementary school friends. It prepared us for the world, because if you could live in the Mississippi Delta, you can go and thrive anywhere. Yes. We had poverty in certain areas, but we didn't know it because we had that incubus there, that incubator of family and connectiveness, and we helped each other. So, yes, and some of those issues still there now. Poverty is still an issue. We have a declining population. We have many of the manufacturing staples of our community now are gone, but the people are still resilient. We still have those community anchors. We still have Main Street revitalization. We still have our chambers. We still have our churches. We still have people who want to see the community become a better place. Now, can we go back to what it used to be? I think the Delta's dynamics have changed now, and so we cannot just be relying upon one. Agriculture was one of our staples. Well, we have to change from that now. So to answer your question, I wish we could go back to that nostalgic period of time, but that's not possible. So now we have to utilize what we have, and then we also have to change and grow with the changing times. So, yeah.
How has being a pastor made you think about poverty and opportunity differently, maybe?
Yeah. Well, we cannot talk about poverty if we don't first begin with those systemic challenges that we've had. Yes, there have been some systemic barriers that will exacerbate the poverty level that we have because of the lack thereof of investments. But we cannot just, blame systems, because on the other side of that, there has to be some personal responsibility and some personal agency, because even if you live in poverty or you have to deal with some of these systemic pressures that areas like the Mississippi Delta and the lack thereof of investment have to deal with, you should want more. And I think that comes from that nucleus, that family's nucleus. I knew that there was a better quality of life out there. Yes, we still have some of those, challenges of poverty, but I think that comes from a lack of economic investment more so.
What's something in the Delta right now that gives you hope?
Always been the people. Always been the resilient spirit of Delta people. Again, as I said, if you can live in the Mississippi Delta, you can live anywhere. Because one thing that we have that I have that maybe other areas, we may not have the infrastructure of, let's say, Madison County or the coast. But we have some great food. Mm-hmm. We got some resilient people. We got some good hun land. And we also you are seeing now, because of our new Commissioner Simmons, you're seeing now major investments in infrastructure improvements. You're seeing now more roads being paved, which attracts more smaller economic development industry. So while our people are the most valuable commodity we have, you are seeing the tide being changed in how we are addressing some of these issues that we're having. Yeah.
So you've mentioned some of these lack of investment, but if you could just sort of tick off, what do you think are the biggest challenges? Well, you've mentioned also population decline, but like thinking about the root challenges in the Delta, what are the kind of handful of things that you see and you sort of see as a priority?
Yeah. Well, the Delta has never lacked talent. What we have lacked is when you look at economic development on the statewide level, you have not seen the major investments like we have done in the state since I've been elected, like we've done over in Marshall County or the Golden Triangle, or Madison County, for example. We need to bridge this healthcare gap that we have. We need to have some more collaboration with our hospitals, with those specialized care services that we have. So we have to rethink that. When you look at our school districts, thank God that Sunflower County and Bolivar County, our ratings have increased, and our students are doing a lot better than maybe some of the other districts. But we gotta make sure we sustain that. When you look at the infrastructure investments, we got to continue that, because we cannot attract major economic development investments without those anchors. Yeah, so we got to have good hospitals. We got to have good health care. We got to have a workforce that's trained. And I would say, and I've said this before, we have workforce trained our people almost to death. When you look at Mississippi Delta Community College, we got one of the best workforce training centers in Indianola, the CAP Center. But when we get them trained, where do we send them? So we got to have a place for them to go and work and then raise a family and have a quality of life. So.
Well, you talk about work, and we talk a lot about work at Empower because we think work is so important, not just to the state economy, not just to local economies, but work is important to the dignity and the purpose of the person doing the work.
Right.
And it's good for everybody. So what happens to a community when work opportunities decline as they have in the Delta?
Yeah. Well, people will stay where opportunity exists. And if that opportunity does not exist there, they're going to move where they can raise their families. They're going to move where they can have a better quality of life. They're going to move where they can make a living. And that has been a challenge. And I think it ties back to economic development investments that we have not had. If you look at it, Grant, we have not had a major economic investment as far as job creation since Baxter's was created in Cleveland. That was the last time. Now we've had, thank God, we've had small businesses come in. We've had entrepreneurs who have planted their flag, but I'm talking about 250, 300 jobs, and that's what we need. We don't have to be Nissan in Canton, but we can make the widgets. Yeah, we have a trained workforce. You would be amazed at the students. I was just at the commencement there at Mississippi Delta. I was the speaker. You would be amazed at those who are getting HVAC certifications and plumbing certifications, and we're having to recommend them to get jobs in Jackson and on the coast. I mean, they have the number of people I've sent down to who have welding certifications down to Ingalls. Well, those are people who I believe would stay in the Delta if they had a place where they could have a sustainable life. So.
Well, so when you talk about economic investment, I'm curious. So we've had Bill Cork, the head of Mississippi Development Authority, on the podcast, and he's talked about. We had sort of a similar conversation about, there are regions that are thriving more than others in Mississippi. And it does seem like certain regions are, quote unquote, getting more investment than others.
Right.
And some of what he said is there's very little that Bill Cork is sitting down in Jackson and deciding where to put investment. Typically, it's out-of-state companies that are looking to invest, and they're looking to where kind of the Venn diagram of a lot of things overlap. They're looking for where there is political alignment, so the local community is all aligned around shared priorities. They're looking for where there is infrastructure that already exists. They're also looking for places where the education system is going to be attractive to people that want to work. And so if you look at the state, maybe it does kind of look like the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and communities like, the Golden Triangle, which has just become a hub for industry and big companies, I guess my perspective is it's not so much that Jackson is deciding to put stuff there. It's that there's just a lot of energy there. And so big companies are saying, I want to be there and I want to come to there. Do you accept sort of that premise, or do you think there's something more ulterior going on that's motivating these challenges where investment's not happening in the Delta?
If you look at our history in the Mississippi Delta, we've had manufacturing. We've had one of the largest, grocers was headquartered there in Indianola. We have the Dollar Generals, so we've had that before. As the population shifted and the investments were not there, then they have gone to other areas. Okay, I still believe that what we did, let's say in Marshall County, I mean, we invested $200 million in the middle of nowhere, and they had to build out their roads, their sewers, their infrastructure. And right there in the Mississippi Delta, we got plenty of nowheres with the infrastructure already in place. And so when I hear people say that as a state, we've done it before, somehow we have now, and some have said because the Delta doesn't vote a certain way as a whole, whether or not that's the case or not. But I have seen in the Mississippi Delta, we have lost manufacturing jobs. We have had it. We've had people buy homes there. We have had, some of the best and brightest that this nation has seen come from the Mississippi Delta. But now, since you see that shift taking place, they are not investing there. And then partly because, we cannot just rely upon manufacturing anymore. The world is changing. And so we have to create ecosystems, to your point. We do have to create ecosystems that will attract those businesses. But we as a state and those who are in the economic development arena must look at the Delta. They must look at the Delta and make those investments because it's possible.
It seems also that the mechanization of agriculture, which started really prior to what you're talking about, has had a huge impact where the industries that used to require a lot more people can do it with a lot less. And so it's necessarily put people out of work. And maybe as a state, we haven't adapted as well to those changes as new technologies have come on board. And so, I think about how do we move away from both agriculture and manufacturing where, we have low cost of living in this state.
Yes.
Anybody with an internet connection really can work virtually from anywhere. So how do we make some of these communities be attractive to people that want to come? Maybe this is a great quality of life here. I certainly think it is. This is the state where I grew up, and I'm proud my kids are growing up. Yeah. How do we make this state more attractive to people maybe that want to work remote?
And that's one of the other pieces of the puzzle to that ecosystem that I was talking about. What we're doing in broadband with the state, we have to connect every hamlet, every village. And the Delta still needs some of those areas that need to be connected. So we can provide opportunities for people to do remote work. So we can continue to provide telehealth because, telehealth is good in itself, but telehealth is not good if the only thing I have is a cell phone. So we have to be able to, data is the next black gold. I mean, that is where technology is headed. So we have to be able to connect every part of this state to do that. What I have seen is that those who are making economic investments, they not only need roads, and highways, but they need to be connected to the world. Right? One of the companies that headquartered there in a part of the modern tool and die building there in Indianola, they ship lights all over this, lighting all over this world, but they had to have a reliable connection. So we have to do more of that. That's part of that ecosystem, tied with healthcare, tied with our school districts, and tied with workforce training. So we have many of those pieces of the puzzles, but we got to also have some help. We got to have some people looking at us.
If you look at the state's workforce participation number, we have historically had really subpar numbers. I mean, we were like 52% of adults were in the labor market a few years ago. It's now up to about 55% of adults in the labor market. But that's lowest or second lowest in the country. Now, admittedly, some of those are retirees. Some of those are stay-at-home moms, which is certainly not something that is a problem. That's a cultural strength, and I hope lots of parents get to stay home with their kids. But when you compare our numbers to other states, not just talking about the Delta, statewide, we're one of the worst states in the country for labor participation. Is the problem simply that jobs don't exist, or is there something deeper that there's enough people on some kind of assistance program that they're making an economic decision that it's not financially worth it for them to work versus get the benefits they can get without working?
I think some of those issues that we see in the workforce participation is we have a lot of low-paying, low-skilled jobs, and there's nothing wrong. I have flipped hamburgers. I've worked at Walmart. I've done it all, but you cannot raise a family on those incomes. Okay, and so you have now working families or working parents, single-family homes with a single family or both parents. They are not able to afford health care. They are not able to, have an upward, mobility outside of, going back to school or going back to get some other certification, working in those types of industries. And so we need to make sure that people have opportunities where they can either get other certifications or other trades, or have the ability to find meaningful employment, because they just are not able to make it on that. And so I think a part of that should be in the equation, because they just have some low-paying, jobs that they just cannot survive off of.
Well, and this is one of those places where we're in violent agreement, and that is some of what it is, as I see, is you're exactly right. There's these low-paying jobs that even a full-time job doesn't really pay enough to live. And maybe that's okay if you're a teenager or a young adult, but as you grow, you've got to be able to make us out we've got to be able to get our wages up so that it's a livable income. And part of the challenge is a challenge that we've been talking about and we're doing some research on is benefits cliffs, where for some people, they are actually, because of the low wages, they're actually able to make more not working than working. And when they would, if they were to get a job or get a promotion, that would put them over a particular threshold that would actually hurt their financial well-being as a family, because they would lose more benefits than the increased income. And so it's the only way to get around that is you actually have to get wages up beyond the point that you would actually gain enough in income that would make up for what you lose in benefits. And part of me is like, somebody who's making an economic decision, that is the best economic decision for their family because of these benefits cliffs that we've created with public policy.
Right.
So have you seen that? Have you seen where people in real life maybe don't take a job, don't take opportunity, or don't take a promotion because they think they have more to lose than to gain?
Yes, I have seen that. I've seen that, especially in my age group. You know, you have those who are doing the very best that they can, but they are stuck at a wage where they cannot, if they did not have the opportunity to receive those benefits, whether it's health care, whether it's food assistance, whether it's help with utilities, they could not make it on their own without it. And so I do agree with you. We have to get those wages up where they can have what I call a livable wage. Yeah. And they can provide for their family, because this is what I've personally seen, and this is what I know to be a fact. I don't know people who want to live off of assistance all of their lives. Most people that I know, they don't want that. But they're stuck in a system that this is what they can do right now. Because people that I talk to all the time, they don't want to live the rest of their life like that. And so we got to find a way that we can provide that opportunity, whether it's better training, whether it's better workforce training, whether it's providing assistance for them to go back to school to boost their skills, get a degree. We have to be able to do that. You're exactly right. And that gives people the dignity and the respect and the ability to provide for their families. I think that's what most people want.
Have you seen or could point to government programs that actually do help people rise, help people become more independent? Because the right certainly talks about government programs like they mostly trap people. They mostly create more dependency.
Mm-hmm. Yes. One of the things that we've done, and we're looking at, especially on the workforce side of it, when you're seeing now, we are paying more attention to career coaches while they're in high school, 11th grade, 10th grade, middle school, college, call it middle college, is on the right. You're seeing more students getting into CTE training and going into those fields where they're starting out right out of high school. They have the ability to get jobs that are paying $20 an hour. When you look at HVAC and welding, again, some of those manufacturers here in the state starting them out $60,000 with a welding CTE certificate. So we're making those strides, especially in workforce training. But here again, they're leaving the Delta to go find their oasis where they can work. So we now, from the state's perspective, the trend has been changing. We still promote 4-year college degrees, but we also, there's another path, there's an alternative path that you can still get what you need, and you can still have a great quality of life. I mean, we need plumbers. When is the last time? I mean, you get a leak. you
need a plumber fast.
You need a plumber fast. Auto mechanics, brick masons. I mean, this is what the community where I'm from. These are the jobs that are in scarcity. And again, our community colleges are doing a great job at providing that training for them.
What do you think we do about the lack of fathers in the home? We're at a point now where 56% of the children born in Mississippi are born to unwed mothers.
There is no doubt that the family unit is the most important. That is the basic building block that a child can have. And we cannot talk about poverty or education or any of these other discussions that we're having without first looking at the family unit. It is critical that children have a father in the home. While we are definitely proud of those single mothers and single grandparents out there who are doing the very best they can, yep. But a child needs to have the father in their lives. Now, historically, there have been systems put in place, unfortunately by our government, especially during the Great Migration, when many of African Americans from the South went to the North to try to find a better quality of life. There were systems in place then that it would have been better that the father not be in the home because the mother could receive more benefits. Okay? And you still see some of those vestiges of that horrific era still present today, because many of the benefits that we just got through talking about, the family cannot receive if there is a threshold in the house where the income is just above. It's not enough to live off of, yeah. But it's too much to receive any assistance. And so at some point, we have to look at, okay, what is the root of the issue? Now that we have the root problem of the issue, do we need to provide workforce training for that non-custodial parent or for that father, for that family unit? Do we need to find parental classes that will train fathers how to be, that will train parents how to be better? Because at the end of the day, it is about the child. It is not about the individual personalities. And so I see a lot of times children are damaged because either parent are not able to get along, or they don't have the skills necessary in order to be the best that they can be, okay, for the child. And so there are programs out there now, and I've seen it work in other states, where they provide a lot of wraparound services. They provide skills that parents may need in order to lift themselves up and provide for the children. But it is critical. It is paramount to a child's survival to at least have either their father or some male figure in their life that is investing into them. Yeah.
Well, this is one of those issues where I think what you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation is so relevant, that we both have to address the systems and the personal responsibility and human agency, because there are real systems in our both tax code, in our benefits programs, the social safety net things that are a true disincentive to marriage and fathers being at home. There are times where I know people are making decisions to cohabitate and not get married because they're going to lose some kind of a benefit by getting married. And yet the data, the research is very clear. Those two lifestyles do not have the same material outcomes for kids, cohabitating versus being married. And so, and I say that certainly as a Christian, and I know you are too, but even setting aside faith and religion, just statistically, empirically, marriage has incredible benefits to communities and to kids and to outcomes.
Yes. And that's the family unit, and that's what we have to. And it's not just the system's responsibility. It is our churches. It is our community. We have to encourage our young people. To you should want to be married. You should want to raise your children together, because that's best for that child. If we're not able to take care of the child, if you're not in a situation where you want what's best for that child, then you don't need to be in that situation.
Yeah. And that's, look, I appreciate the moms who undertake a great sacrifice to give a child up for adoption if they know they're not in a position to take care of that child. And that's good.
Yes.
What do you think about, so there's been a lot of conversation in recent years about the success sequence, which is kind of at the heart of what we're talking about. This was actually a Brookings Institute, which is a left of center think tank nationally, that did the research on this. But they basically said, when you look at the outcomes and the characteristics of people in America that succeed, they're largely 3 steps they have to take. And if you follow these 3 steps, there's like a 97% chance you're going to be at least in the middle class. It doesn't guarantee all kinds of wealth, but it's a hedge against poverty.
Yes.
And those 3 things are graduate high school, get a job, and get married before you have kids. And I recognize that's not as simple. It's very simple to say. It's very challenging and complex for people, particularly growing up in a community where you haven't seen a lot of people graduate high school, or you haven't seen a lot of people hold down a good job, and you certainly haven't seen a lot of people build intact families. But what do you think about the idea of, in middle school or high school, promoting the success sequence, not from a moralistic, even biblical worldview, but from a statistical, kind of like we used to do on Just Say No to Drugs, and wear your seatbelt. Yeah. This is the path to build a great life.
Right. I think it is, and we have to start early with that. When you focus on, and I think we're doing a great job as a state getting students to graduate. Well, I mean, our graduation numbers have risen in the past. We're doing a great job in my district in the Delta to make sure that happens. But we also, again, not only do we need to focus up on high school graduation, but we also need to make sure that they are able to find meaningful work. Again, as you said earlier, going to McDonald's or Wendy's is good for high school. Yeah. But this is not for a career path. And we have to be able to, and I think we're doing better than we have in the past on providing opportunities for students as well as parents to go back to school, because you're seeing more of that now. You're seeing them go back to school. You're seeing them get skills to increase. But here again, when we do get them trained and we get them on a upward path, many of them are leaving to where the opportunity exists.
You're training kids that are going to other parts of the state.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, you're exporting your talent.
We are. And some of them are leaving the state, So to your point, I think that's a good model that we can utilize and start them early with that.
Let's talk about education. Let's go a little deeper there. How would you grade the education options in your community?
Well, in my community, we have basically one option. That's our public school system. That is the anchor for many of our communities in the Delta. We do have a few either Christian schools or Catholic schools, and private academies sprinkled in the Delta. But the main staple has always been our public education system. Yeah.
And how are they doing?
Well, going back to Sunflower County and Bolivar County districts, they have done a remarkable job coming from an F district just a few years ago. Last year, I think we were a B in Sunflower County, and it took great strides to get to that. Yeah. But that's not the case for many of the surrounding districts. Yeah.
So what about school choice? There are a few charter schools in the Delta. There's one in Greenwood. There's one in Clarksdale. These are public options that are giving families a choice. We'll talk about maybe the other types of school choice, but let's just start there. What do you think of the concept? Do you support parents having more options for their kids?
Well, of course, parents should have options for their children. I think all of us agree on that. I think the point that there is some work to do on is if they are given the choice with the public dollars, is it unintentionally hurting rural schools who do not have the choice, as we would say, a Madison County school or a school on the coast, because the only choice for most of us in the Delta is the public school system.
Well, increasingly, there are pockets of other places where there are options. And I think of like Greenwood, LaFleur County now has, you have certainly the traditional public school system. For a long time, you had a Catholic school, St. Francis. I understand they've closed. But there is Delta Streets Academy, which is a private Christian school that works to keep tuition really low so that it's affordable for anybody. There's now a charter school there, and LaFleur Legacy Academy is giving kids a public school choice option. If we passed more school choice legislation, would we not see more options created?
Well, that may be that's a good question, but here again, the challenge with that is in the Delta, if there is a choice that is given to parents where their tax dollars will leave the district that their child is currently in, and it goes to this charter school, are you unintentionally hurting the district with children who are not able to go there? And so that is the question. That is the thing that have caused us pause to how do we solve those issues? Because we're not just when those resources leave, especially underserving communities, you're looking at how do we provide bus transportation? How do you provide upkeep on the buildings that and many of our school buildings are 50 plus years old? And so a child in Sunflower County and a child in Madison County are dealing with two different playing fields, because our school districts look nothing like or receive any of the tax dollars from the local economy as a child in Madison County. So we're talking about two different games. And so that has been, I guess, where the hang-up has been with that, and that's what we have to figure out.
Well, and I think when we talk about school choice, sometimes it's challenging because we're talking about multiple different types of models.
I agree.
But if we just talked about charter schools are open to everybody. So there's no admissions, there's no tuition, there's not a limiting factor. And yes, the money follows the child. Really in the same way that we're not going to fund a child in Madison. The state's not going to send money for a child in Madison if that family has moved to Hattiesburg. The money, in a sense, already follows the child based on where kids move around. So charter schools simply say, let's let the money follow the child, but they don't have to move their residence. But it stays within the public system. As you know, charter schools are held accountable just like traditional public schools. They take the same state test. I think more communities in the Delta would benefit from a charter, and there's no evidence that traditional public schools actually get worse. The idea is that it's sort of this rising tide that might lift all boats. Maybe charters serve some kids that were falling through the cracks at traditional public school, and then traditional public school serves kids that maybe wouldn't be a good fit for charters. And the only way to make sure you match the right kids with the right school is somebody who knows those kids best needs to have the power to match them with a school. And that's where we think, let's give parents the power to match their kid with a school that works for them. and it's not going to be perfect, but I bet they get it right more than the current system, which is so dependent on the price of a home you can afford in a community with a great school system. That's sort of charter schools. What about so this past legislation? I mean, this past year, House Bill 2 was a key priority for the speaker. It was a bill that included both public to public choice. It included some expansion of where charter schools could open. And it had this private school choice program that would have created 12,500 scholarships, really only available to low-income kids first, because they would have gotten the front of the line. I know you didn't vote for that bill. Why not?
Well, again, when those who sent me to Jackson, when I heard from those parents and those administrators there in the Delta, we don't have the options as many of the other school districts. When you look at, especially in Sunflower County, the only other option that we would have would be either a traditional private school or the Christian school that's there,
which is Restoration.
Which is Restoration. And so, what works for larger metropolitan areas just doesn't work for schools in the Delta. Again, we're talking about two different systems, and so the money that leaves our districts will truly, those underserving districts that are already struggling. That loss would hurt our communities, and so that is the feedback that we were getting from our people. And so we had to. And then another thing with that bill, the district that the child was going to, the home district could not allow, couldn't hinder the child from leaving.
Right.
But the receiving district could say, we can't accept that child, or we don't have the room or the capacity to do that. And so I thought that there should have been, at least if the home school can't hinder, then the district that's receiving the child shouldn't have that option either. And so that was another hang-up that that needs to be looked at. And so our folks didn't support it, not in the language that we had it in.
Well, there was kind of a disagreement between the House and the Senate on a lot of that, but certainly even in the public-to-public piece, what they called portability, as you're talking about, the House version we liked a lot better, simply because it didn't just say it did give the receiving district the ability to accept students or not, but it said there has to be an open and transparent process that is lacking today.
Right.
Currently, it is truly just a good old boy system of, do you know somebody on your school board? Do you know somebody on that school board? Can you pull some strings and get them to let you in and get your district to release you? We think it ought to be a transparent process. The receiving district ought to have the ability to dictate, do they have the capacity to serve the student? But it needs to be an open, transparent process so that the public can see, and it's not just picking and choosing the best students.
True.
Y'all finished your regular session. You were the governor called a special session and then rescinded it and said, we're actually not going to bring you back in.
Yeah.
Were you glad that you didn't come back in, or did you want to come back in for redistricting?
Well, I'm excited that we didn't have to come back in. We've just had a long session. This is the time we try to get back into our districts and look at starting, looking forward to the next session. And then, so I didn't think that we needed to come back, even if we had to come back for that issue. That's something that we can deal with in January, and I'm sure we will. And there's some other challenges around that anyway. So I'm excited that we didn't have to come back.
Well, and it doesn't sound like this has been put to bed forever. It sounds like there's going to be another opportunity for the legislature to address maybe Supreme Court districts, maybe legislative district, and maybe congressional district. The congressional district piece seems to have gotten the most attention. What do you think about that? Does our congressional districts need to be changed?
Well, I think we ought to look at, first of all, let's go back to the legislature drew the districts. And many of us who were there in 22, we voted against the way the lines were drawn. So this is to our own doing. This is not something that has not been done before. We've always done this. The legislature has drawn the lines with 38 to 40% of the second congressional district being black voters. That district should have the right to elect the person whom they want to represent them. Again, we got our own selves in this situation. Just like the lines could have gone differently the last time. If our current congressman could have gotten more of Hinds County where he lives, but here again, the legislature drew those lines, and so. Every 10 years, we have been prescribed to redraw the lines due to the census, and I think that's what we should continue to do.
Well, my understanding of the Calais Supreme Court decision was it didn't require any redistricting. It simply said you can't use racial demographic information to draw those lines, which we have historically been told you must use racial demographics to draw those lines. So now they're saying you can use partisan affiliation. Of course, we don't have where you sign up with a party. We don't have party registration, but you could certainly look at voting patterns to see this. But it does seem problematic or concerning to me that when you look at states across the country, both types of states seem to be moving to at least make it harder for the other party to win elections.
Right.
Maybe we take the race out of it, but they're making it hard for other party to win the elections. Now, a lot of the national media likes to say, well, this is just Republican states. But in Democrat states, they've done everything they can to draw those lines so that Republicans can't be elected. I think the difference between where I and a lot of my conservative friends land on this is I don't look at it and say, well, if Democrats have been doing this in other states, it's time for us to do it too. I don't think that's probably in the best interest of our state to draw the lines in a state where we have, between 40 and 45% typically vote Democrat, to try to spread that out amongst all 4 congressional districts so that not one of our congressmen is elected could elect a Democrat. Mutually assured destruction, where both parties work to hurt the other one, it seems like a bad place to go.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, we've gotten off, and there are extremes in both parties. There are extremes in both parties, and unfortunately, in the day that we live in, those extremes get a lot of social media and nationwide attention. But what I found out is that those who are moderate and those who are willing to work together, that's what moves the needle with legislation. And those states who are working together, you see a lot of growth in every area. So with those extremes, it's not feasible to the growth of the state of Mississippi to say, well, we are a conservative state, and I think all of our lines, you can't have it all that way. Because what's going to happen is, I think you're going to see it's not going to work out the way that the extremes of those parties want to see it happen. It's not going to work out that way. And you're actually going to be shooting yourself in the foot because those who feel like they are disenfranchised from that process, they're not going away, right? and they're going to continue to vote. They're going to continue to mobilize, and they're going to continue to apply pressure where they can. And so whether you change the federal congressional lines, you're going to see legislative districts change, right? You're going to see our state commission, public service commission, and our transportation commission, it'll affect their lines. So you can't be so extreme on one end that you forget about the trickle-down effect that'll happen. Yeah. So I don't think it's beneficial for either party to have it all one way or the other.
Yeah.
Then, that's why we have the two-party system. There should be balance.
You talked at the beginning briefly about these kind of conversations don't come up a lot.
Right.
It seems to me in America, not just Mississippi, these kind of conversations are happening less and less.
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
Well, we've become so polarized in our own beliefs that we are not willing to learn from someone else. Because if your political philosophy is so extreme that someone else's opinion or viewpoint doesn't matter, then the people suffer. I think great legislation has always been formed when people who may have differing point of view sit down and have a conversation, kneecap to kneecap. Because what I do see is that there are more issues that we agree on, because most people that I sit down and talk with from a different party, they want the same thing that I want. They want their families to live in a safe neighborhood. They want their children to receive a quality education. They want to be able to work and provide for their families. They want safe neighborhoods. They want a place where their children and grandchildren can live and thrive and be the best they can be. So those are things that we agree on. So let's start there. We're going to always have issues that we don't agree on, but the best policy that I've seen, and I've only been here a short while, the best policy that I've seen have come from conversations that people had that may have different viewpoints, because we focus upon the meat of it. I always say it's just like eating chicken. You take the meat and leave the bones, Yeah. And so I think we need more of that, because, again, extremes get social media attention. But true legislation and true policy change comes from those who are having conversations who may disagree. Yeah.
And I think even stepping back from politics, our communities would be stronger if there was more genuine friendships with people who disagreed politically. And I think the only way to do that is if you sort of you take the temperature out and you move politics to an appropriate place. Right. Politics is important.
Right.
It's not more important than everything else in our lives. And today, so much of our problems stem from the fact that we have elevated politics to the only thing that matters, and everything else trickles down from it, instead of saying, when I think about Otis, I think about a guy who we can connect over our faith. We can connect over our families and have many times.
That's right.
We can connect over our work and business. We're two guys who care about this state, who want our kids and grandkids to grow up here. We care about solving problems. Where we disagree is like way down the list.
Right.
Do you find that this kind of thing, people who disagree coming together in friendship and talking policy, does this happen more in Mississippi than maybe the outside world thinks it does?
I agree with you. I think it does. I think what we do here in the state, there's a couple of dinners that we have every year, and one of my colleagues started one. He continued it from someone else, and we call it our bipartisan dinner, and we have a couple of every year. And we still sit down and eat together, and when we still have laughs together, and we still debate policy and how we feel, but we connect on a personal level, because the person at the well or the person on the other side of the aisle is not your enemy. And far too long, I think, from the national policy perspective, we've seen national politics play locally here in the state, and that's just not what we do. We may not vote the same on every issue, but we don't hate each other. We're not enemies. And I would dare say that we need to start looking at each other as humans and connect on that level. Because at the end of the day, on our deathbed, it doesn't matter if we're Republican or we're Democrat. Only what we've done for Christ is going to last, at the end of the day. Policy is one thing, but the personal connection is another. Yeah.
Preach, brother. Way to go. Well, let me wrap up with this, sort of like, if we did more of this, more working together, more finding areas of common ground, more solving problems together by listening more than we talk, what would this state look like in 20 years?
If we did that, I think you'll see more people staying, number one. More of our talented graduates staying in the state, because now they can see themselves a part of the bigger picture. What we're doing and what we do, because in the legislature, having conversations, because if you look at the school board, and then I'll get back to that, if you look at the school board, 90% of the votes that we take are together. 90% of the votes, maybe a little bit more than that. There are just a few policy issues that you'll see down partisan lines.
That's right.
And so you'll start to see growth in those areas, and you'll start to see I call it the Tip O'Neill and the Ronald Reagan relationships, where they battle it out on the floor, but they had dinner together. I think Washington needs to come down and look at what we're doing here in the state and working together to at least achieve some common goal there.
Man, no doubt.
Yeah.
And if you look down at, when I sit in the gallery and I look down at the house, it's not broken up by partisanship, and there's a lot of desk mates where you share a desk with somebody who votes differently than you.
Right.
And the critical piece that I think has to be present where you see this work is curiosity. And one of the things I've always appreciated about you is you're curious and you ask good questions about me and my life and how I come to that.
Yeah.
And I think for people who are curious enough to listen, ask good questions, try to understand how somebody else's life experience and their family and their history brought them to a place where they could view the world this way. If we all did a lot more like that,
that's exactly right,
we'd be in a lot better place.
Yes, and it shapes it shapes the whole person when you do that, and I think we need more of that. But again, there are issues that we may never see eye to eye on, but we ought to be mature enough to build bridges together that we can walk down together and say, look, this is good for the whole. And you have to have a maturity with that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, Otis, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the work that you all are doing. And thank you for at least, as always, sitting down and sharing with us how you feel on certain things.
My privilege.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of the Empower Podcast. To learn more about how you can get involved and we can work together to make Mississippi a place where everyone can rise, go to our website at empowerms.org. Please like or subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you'll be notified of future episodes.